Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So today we're going to be upgrading my mining rig. I had a mining rig that had 1070, 1080, and 1080 Ti. RX 570s and RX 590s all kind of mixed into one miner. It's been running for about a year and a half to 2 years. I decided that I wanted to make it a little bit more efficient, and also as the cards are getting a little older, potentially sell those on a third market and upgrade to a better graphics card itself. I sat down and I did the calculations. In my opinion, the best card right now, specifically for Ethereum and potentially Monero, is going to be the AMD Radeon VIIs. These guys are very efficient cards. You can get anywhere from 80 to 90 mega hash, running from 220 to 290 watts. Effectively, these cards, 8 of these cards can replace 16 to 18 graphics cards using the same amount of power and actually outputting even higher mega hash than the previous cards that I had, and even less power depending on the settings that you actually do, right? These guys are very power hungry cards, and they run a little bit hotter than my previous cards that I've had. The way that I did this is that I actually purchased a AMD Radeon VII, tested it out for a couple weeks now on my main computer to see what its mining rates are, kind of see how stable it is and how hot it runs. Now the way that I did my calculations is that since I'm getting rid of graphics cards itself, right? So I had effectively on that rig itself, I had about 18 cards on that rig. I had 6 set up on top and then 12 set up on the bottom. And when you go from 16 to 8 cards, there's going to be less heat produced in my mining closet, so that I have less heat to dissipate. So it'll actually function relatively the same. It is the summertime, so the temperatures are a little bit hotter. It's a little bit harder to cool, but you get some great hash rates with these guys and lower power consumption, right? So I'm going to be using the same motherboard that I had, which is the ASRock H110 Pro BTC Plus, right? This can support 12 GPUs. My power supply is going to be the EVGA Supernova 1000 Gold Series 2. Now, since these cards draw about 240 to almost 300 watts, I would realistically only plug in 2 of these cards to this power supply. You could potentially run 3, but you'd really be risking it at that point, only because you'd be reaching the upper limits of what this card what this PSU can handle, especially since you're powering your CPU and your motherboard with this. I would really not recommend it. I would do 2 at most. So what I chose to do is, instead of going for other main PSUs, I went with a HP server PSU. These guys are rated at 1200 watts. Now, don't be fooled by this number. This specifically is in relation to running 200 to 240 volts, right? So what that means is, with a little bit of, work your physics, your power outlets in your regular house is only going to be about 110 volts, right? 110, 120 volts. That is not, when you plug that into this PSU, you're actually only getting 800 watts. So that technically means that this can only run 2 cards efficiently run to your power outlet. If you run 3, you'll be kind of pushing that upper limit, because whenever you have your watt number, you want to get to about 80 to 90% of that at most. You almost never want to pass 80%, because then you'll be pushing the limits of your power supply to potential fire hazards and all sorts of unfun stuff that you don't want to deal with. So luckily, I have my mining closet set up to 240 volts. I wired it that way, so I'm going to be getting the full 1200 watts that this PSU can provide. So this means that at 250 average watts to 290, I can run 4 of them without much of a hassle with it. And then to be able to run the other 6 that's here, 2 in here, 6 left, I'm going to do 3 and 3 on each of these guys to distribute it efficiently. The reason I'm doing 8 instead of 12 is that I've previously tried to actually make a 12 GPU AMD Radeon VII rig, and with Windows, anything after 6 I had a lot of difficulty with having a stable system, where it will constantly crash and have issues with Windows. And then with Hive OS, which is another mining OS that I use, it effectively doesn't support Radeon 7s, and with SMOS, Simple Miner OS, it works, but anything after 8, I had difficulties. Now, it may have something to do with the ASRock motherboard, that it might not support more than 8 GPUs on it, or maybe it needs a BIOS update. I'm going to do a little bit of research. I've ran it just fine with 12 EVGAs or a mix of EVGAs and AMDs when it came to Hive OS. But when it came to SMOS, I was having difficulty in anything more than 8, and it wouldn't even boot. I'll do some more research on that, but as of right now, I'm just going to run with 8. With the way that I have my mining closet set up, that's the amount of watts that I want to use. And today I'm going to show you how I put one together from scratch. So I have my GPU and my power supply sitting at the base of the miner rack itself. These are standard 12 GPU mining racks that you can buy on Amazon or eBay or Alibaba, wherever you choose to purchase it. What I did was to make room for additional GPUs when I was making it a 16 GPU rig. I went ahead and purchased some L-bars from Home Depot, just kind of calculated and put them together so that they could actually have one more stack. But what I also did was I added an area to add these server PSUs, which 2 of them fit perfectly within that space. And what we're going to do is we're going to run the actual 6 to 8 pins directly from those. And when plugged up, both their power is accessible and can power your GPUs without really doing a bunch of extensions. We're going to go ahead and wire up everything, and I'm going to give you some finer points as I'm going through. Alright, so let's start going ahead and opening up our GPUs themselves. The way that I'm going to be doing this is plugging up the GPUs in such a way that they'll have the most distance between them while also being, within the actual slots themselves. We're going to go ahead and you plug the GPU itself directly into the riser. You have to make sure to have the risers powered. Never, ever, ever run a riser directly to the GPU itself. I definitely recommend against it. It's good for everything to have its own power cable. You can run into issues such as burning and things catching on fire, and again, we never want to have stuff like that happen. Secure all your GPUs on the rack itself. Make sure that you bolt everything down because you don't want to have accidents. I would very much recommend a torque screw itself so you can actually do this. I'm OCD about all my miners and my packaging, so I actually put everything back together in pristine condition. So when it comes time to sell your cards, you can have the original packaging with one always gives you good value for your actual GPUs. In addition to, people always like to buy things with the original box. Now this is going to take a little bit of time, so I'll probably fast forward through some of it itself. Now what I'm doing is right now I'm actually just going ahead and setting up all the risers. I'm going to be wiring them to my motherboard in just a little bit. And then also running the power. Now I don't recommend running the power at the same time as you set them up, because what I've noticed in some instances that you'll actually set it up, and then what will happen is you'll have the unfortunate situation where you'll have power cables crossing or have not the best power management or cable management that you could have. So what I recommend is setting your GPU risers up first, and then running power to them, not running them one at a time, because again, you'll do the whole setup and you're like, oh shit, the wires aren't great. I'm gonna have to move some stuff around and redo it. So that's usually what I recommend when setting up a mining rig. First, set up your GPUs in the places that you want it to be, and then go ahead and run the power after the fact. Now, some people might not agree with that, but that's just the way that I do it. Now again, like I said, the reason I chose MSI is because of the warranty. If I haven't said it, that's why. I personally think that MSI graphics cards for AMD are the best graphics cards you can buy because MSI includes a 3-year warranty with their cards. They're also transferable, and it doesn't necessarily matter where you purchased your card from, you still have a warranty with it. When it comes to overall, I would say EVGA is the best warranty that money can buy, or best graphics card that money can buy, specifically due to their warranty, because they also have that warranty, but their turnaround times is a little bit quicker when you're doing an RMA, which is what you do when you have an issue with any of your graphics cards. You submit an RMA to get it replaced due to a defect. I got really unlucky when I first purchased this batch. I bought 16 of them, and what happened was that 2 of them were actually dead out the box. I've really never seen that happen. I don't think that's a norm. You know, if other people have purchased these and have that experience, you know, please leave a comment below. And we can see if that's a trend, but it's probably just a little bit unlucky on my part. Happens with every manufacturing. That, you know, some aren't always going to function perfectly, but the purchaser that the seller that I purchased it from was super awesome. Very quick turnaround, and you know, issued me a refund, and I have one more card on its way back. So, all right, so we're done with the first row. We're going to go ahead and move on to the second row of cards. I would recommend, if you're going to run, if you're ever using a dual level rack itself, I would recommend splitting them equally, right? Just because it can have 6 on the bottom and 6 on the top. If you're running 8, I wouldn't do all 6 at the bottom, only because of heating. These cards themselves produce a good amount of heat, and it would be better to actually have these cards farther away from each other so that they don't get affected by the overall heat that they actually produce, right? The farther away they are from each other, the less heat issues that you'll actually have. So if you're doing 6, I do 3 and 3. If you're doing 8, I do 4 and 4, and whatever the, you know, best distribution is for them is what I would recommend. You can run into issues such as burning and things catching on fire, and again, we never want to have stuff like that happen. Secure all your GPUs on the rack itself. Make sure that you bolt everything down because you don't want to have accidents. I would very much recommend a torque screw itself so you can actually. Now everyone's power situation is different based on the utilities that we're all at, right? So you want to find the efficiency rating for yourself, so you can have the most efficient card itself. The reason I chose AMD for me, or the reason I chose the Radeon VIIs is specifically because I want to maximize the amount of power output that I have in my mining closet. Effectively, I have 60 amps in my mining closet itself, and with 60 amps, I want to run effectively not just the least power consuming cards themselves, but the most power that I can use with producing the highest hash rate is the way my philosophy when it goes to that.